All right, so here we go. Episode 14 of Year of the Projects. We are doing the persons arc. Um, and we just finished binaries and identity across groups as reinforcing group stability. I thought that went really well, actually, despite how intimidated I was by my prompt. And we are jumping straight into neurodiversity and gender and sexual diversity as positive indicators for human adaptability in increasingly dynamic times. I somewhat set this up in the previous episode when I was discussing how fearful oldsters, usually oldsters, but not always oldsters, can be about gender and sexual diversity when encountering it in more modern culture as it has grown more accepted. Honestly, what I consider to be in the wake of the tolerance movement that came out of what I consider World War II, but came out of the Cultural Revolution and the Love Revolution, the Free Love Revolution, and honestly, just the general global horror at what had occurred during the Holocaust and in warfare in general. I think the Holocaust was a huge aspect of it, but the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima were also aspects that woke humanity up to its own capacity for barbarism in a larger scale, a larger sense that honestly paved the way for better people. Increased humanitarianism, increased altruism, and now I would make the argument that what we are seeing when it comes to neurodiversity and gender and sexual diversity is really just a positive indication of our newly adaptable capacity in social and in our cognitive ability to perceive, I suppose. Social interrelating and our cognitive capacity to perceive the world around us. And this is something that I really pull from my environmentalist roots in the sense that empathizing with or trying to put myself in the position of animals or other creatures on this earth that are not me, thinking about how the mantis shrimp has spectrums of vision that I could only dream of. Things like this, realizing how limited our worldview and our scope really is for the human eye, our human perception, and understanding that within that context of being that limited, we are capable also of accounting for the things that we can't see purely by acknowledging that they are there or that they could be there. In our world or in our understanding of the world. So I think that the way we are seeing the rise in neurodiversity, we could go on from like a completely pragmatic perspective. We could just acknowledge the fact that human altruism and humanitarian motivations are on the rise to the point where we are caregiving better for those in our society who have not conformed to our society. And our society has been incredibly rigid. It's been incredibly rigid. It's been incredibly static. And I would make the argument that previously that served us in a positive way, in the sense that it gave us boundaries, it gave us structure, it made us feel secure and safe in the world enough to grow and to move in it. But it also limited us incredibly, incredibly so, and in really harmful ways. Obviously, you don't have to look too far to see the ways it harmed the gays. Ha ha ha, I did it just for the rhyme. But there are many ways that having a super narrow, binary dependent society has been harmful to us, and this opening up into more spectrum-based thinking in a general sense, in a sense where we can have a green party, for example, maybe Jill Stein this time. I hope. We could only fucking pray. Oh my god. But anyway, moving beyond the binary, right? Moving beyond this rigid if this or that, or I should say, moving beyond the rigid this or that, he or she, yeah. it gets really difficult to talk about binaries in that sense, as in moving beyond them, within a society where they still very much are prevalent, and they still provide a lot of people quite a bit of support or sense of security or stability or structure. What I'm arguing for, what I think many people argue for in their personhood, in the way that they are showing up in the world, in the way that they are embracing spectrums and spectrum-based thinking, but what we are arguing for, I think, is to move away from seeking security in those things, or even seeking security in rigid structures, in social structures in the first place. The move towards social dynamism, towards having sociability stay more closely to vibe. This is so hard to articulate, but rather than having social rigidity, to having social fluidity in a way that doesn't what is it, like, completely tear us down, in scary ways that, like, I don't even know what it threatens anymore, because I live in it so thoroughly. But this idea that the lack of social structures will inherently create fixed social structures will inherently create a lack of stability is just not necessarily true. It depends on where you personally are finding and seeking security and stability. And honestly, like, to me, the fact that sociability exists, the fact that humans are social creatures in general, that's enough for me. I tend to stop at one. I tend to be like, oh yeah, well, we're social creatures, so, like, that gives me security in a social way, in, like, a loneliness way, in a people interpersonaling kind of way. And I know that I am an incredibly social creature, and I have a lot of social competency, such that it can, I might be taking that for granted and not really acknowledging the extent to which that gives me a sense of security. But I also think that most people are incredibly competent social creatures when they trust themselves and they're reaching out in good faith to others. Those are the main two concerns for people when it comes to sociability. When we're talking to kids about making friends, when you're encouraging children or animals to be more social, you are really working on self-trust relationships, and you're working on the behaviors of reaching out and making connection. And those things are easy to teach, they're easy to learn, and they don't require social rigidity or rigid structures in the social makeup. So I think moving towards a more socially fluid and dynamic state for people is kind of where we're headed anyway. And there's nothing that hasn't led the way more than the gender and sexuality revolution, or the increase in neurodiversity awareness. I do want to call it neurodiversity awareness because I think neurodiversity has always been there. It's just getting treated like it's real, which is really nice to see. So that has been wonderful improvements in our institutional interrelating with individuals, but also in our interpersonal interrelating with individuals, and I want to call that out. I do tend to be a little bit of a paper pusher, and I do put a lot of weight into the written word, and so much of my life I have noticed or paid attention to the way forms are written, and what things are and are not included in the form, right? Like, and seeing the increase in inclusivity when it comes to gender and sexuality in, let's say, healthcare form work has been really encouraging to me. I'm like, cool. Some people at the policy level have agreed that this is something that needs to be acknowledged and addressed for individuals, so that not only can they get, like, tailored specified care for their personal needs. Did you know, like, lesbian sex ed is so much different? Like, they face different challenges, they have different risks of STIs, like, all sorts of things. And of course, gay men as well. And so, like, this needs to be taught as though it is real, and we are seeing that. And so that is something that I find just very encouraging. I find it very uplifting to see. Even just new boxes on form work is very, very just heartening to me. And that is a huge part of what's making people feel so fucking devastated right now under the current Nazi regime in America in 2025. Woohoo! Yay! Project 2025 is going forward exactly as they depicted that they would do so. Somebody's got to take these people out, like some average folk have just got to start. Never mind, I'm not going to encourage people towards violence. I actively said I wasn't going to do that. But let's violently erase them in our behaviors, right? Like, let's leave no room for hate in our worlds that we create, in our interpersonal interrelating, and in our internal understanding of the world. Let's leave no room for them, and there will be no room for them if we all do it. But anywho, where I was going with that was that this current situation of Project 2025 is being so devastating to morale, at least partially because all of those people who aggressively fought just to get some checkboxes on some form works are seeing all of that bureaucratic progress just be completely erased. It's just getting absolutely trashed and torn up. And personally, I see it as a double tragedy because all of those people who had done all that work to get all that stuff really at the policy level, at the legal form work protected level, right? At the federally protected level. Your identity being federally protected was huge. Huge. Last 10 years. Oh my god. Wow. Last 10, 20 years. Holy shit. The level of progress we've made at that level has just been just gigantic. And to see it be completely just destroyed has been devastating because the people who have been doing that work have been a small margin of our overall population. It has been too small of a margin of our overall population, and unfortunately the masses, or the most people of our population, don't even realize those people were fighting for them, right? They don't even realize that there was this front line of paper pushers just quietly working in the background to completely undermine and erase the hate that was coming down from this trickle down economy. And that lack of awareness of that, possibly that lack of care, that that amount of apathy is definitely what led to this particular awful erasure of all of that effort and all of that work, because it won't work without all of us. And unfortunately, all of those apathetic souls, the masses, the group of people, most people, right? And again, I'm talking about Americans. Most Americans are not doing that frontline work that those people were doing because they don't even believe in things like bureaucracy in the first place. Bureaucracy is synonymous with autocracy. It's synonymous with authoritarianism. It is the man telling them to do things. And so they fucking hate it. They're like, nah, fuck you, I hate the man. Right? So there's a huge divide there. There's a huge disconnect. I'm always calling it a lack of literacy, a lack of education, a lack of understanding, a lack of awareness, a lack of allyship, a lack of solidarity, a lack of empathy, a lack of capacity to think of themselves as being just as good as. But there is a totally reasonable explanation also, depending on how tinfoil hat you want to be, that it's actually just actively being sabotaged, and it's not tinfoil at all, actually. It is the state of this system is designed to keep the majority, all of the people with the actual power, to be stupid and pointed in the wrong direction, right? And when I say stupid, I don't mean it insultingly. I mean blind, deaf, and dumb to reality, as in being actively manipulated away from being able to see, hear, or speak about the true evil in the world that's operating against them. That's the entire point, right? That is, and I'm not even going to say bread and circuses, because it's so much more than entertain and distract. It is worse than entertain and distract. It is systemically designed to ensure that the majority of people simply do not use their power against the evil that oppresses them. And it's working, and it has been working. It has been working for centuries. So when I see neurodiversity and gender and sexuality diversity showing up in the world, showing up as acknowledged in the world, it gives me hope. Because when there's more variability in the majority, when there's more change, when there's more dynamism, when there's more capacity to be sneaky, which is essentially what's happening there, it's harder to control. It's harder to control the masses when they are so diverse. It's harder to control a majority. It's harder to influence them all one way or another if they are too diverse to be influenced in the same exact way. So each person making themselves into an incredibly unique human being with their own loves, their own tastes, their own abilities to perceive the world, their own unique means of perceiving the world. And to see them honored for it, to see them given positive self-concepts, both internally and externally, that's heartening. That is actual resistance. People who positively perceive their own uniqueness is real resistance. When you look at yourself and you think, I'm different, in a way that doesn't also feel like I'm wrong, that's resistance. That is winning against oppressive regimes. Yeah, we're 17 minutes in, I feel like I just fucking finished. I just said it all. But that's the beauty of it. And so I guess I'll just come right back around to the fact that, yeah, we're winning. Like, we are winning. It doesn't feel like we're winning, but we're fucking winning. Because every time we push back with love and joy and honor for the unique human spirit and for our capacity to show empathy and solidarity across divides, across culture, across language barriers, across all sorts of different divides or things that might divide us, we win. We always win when that happens. And it can happen internally. It can happen in your dreams. It can happen in small moments. But you have to be present for it. And that's another thing that this takes us all the way back to a couple mindfulness episodes I did, a few times talking about quantum psychology. It really is happening at that level. It's happening in this very, very microsecond sort of way inside of you, inside of me. And if we're not being present with ourselves in those moments, then we won't make the progress that we want to see in the world. And that's hard. That's really hard to do under conditions where you're constantly being rushed, where you're constantly being told that you need to produce, that you need to justify your existence through labor, usually, or through some other means, that your existence just isn't enough on its own, which it is, actually. We have the resources, honestly, for every person to have their own little acre of land, okay? Every single person could have an acre of land. I know an acre's super big. Even like a half acre, really. I would be totally content with a half acre personally, but like everybody has like, we have that capacity. Even for as many people are on the earth, if we ignored national borders, but we continued to pay honor to cultural relationships, and we redistributed ourselves as a species across the earth in ways that were more ecologically sustainable, and we did it with respect, we did it with care, we did it with a lot of talk and discussion. We could do this. We've all moved house before. We've all helped people move before. It could be exciting even. You know, we have the capacity to do this. But if we did that, and if we really started investing in closed system thinking, in the sense of like waste reclamation, both our own like actual personal refuse and like our trash, right? Wasn't it? I feel like I talked about this before, but didn't Singapore declare war on Canada for shipping their recycles to them as trash? Was it Singapore? I don't know. I know I brought this up before because I thought everybody laughed, and I was like, honestly, I would also declare war. I don't care. I would do it too. Like, fuck that. Like, who does that? Who just ships their trash to a different country and like tells their own country folk that it was being recycled, and then just like dumps it on the shores of some island? Like, fuck you, right? Like, you just made a new plastic island. Screw you guys. What the hell, Canada? Right? Like, that was so fucked up. But anyway, my point is, yeah, we all do some fucked up shit, but we could actually do some really cool shit together if we worked hard together. And this idea of redistributing us, it's pretty massive. I think obviously the redistribution of resources probably needs to come first for the sense of empowerment, but we also want to make sure nobody gets like too megalomaniac about it and tries to go all world dominion on us. Obviously, that has not worked out so far. So there has to be some kind of agreement in place. There has to be some kind of like Greenland-style neutrality involved. And we do have land masses for that. We do. And we have needs in land masses. Urgent needs. And we have people who could fill those needs. And really, the biggest fear for people in traveling to other countries and like living there and working there and helping is like the fear of death and disease and dying, and that's not a concern. It's really not. I can say with some confidence that we have the capacity to ensure the comfort of everybody in doing this kind of great work. As long as those resources were redistributed, we could do it in a 5-star hotel kind of fashion. I mean, we could be, what is that song? Pimpin' all over the world. Yes, such a good song. We could do that, like, as people. We could do it with joy. We could redistribute ourselves, our resources, along more equitable, sustainable means. And more environmentally conscious means. Oh my god, please can we just stop ruining our own home? It feels like we're shitting in our own bed, right? Like, isn't that what it feels like, humanity? Come on, tell me for real how your humanity feels right now when you connect to the rest of the species. Doesn't it feel like you're shitting in your own bed? I know it does for me. Because it does, because we know what we're doing. We know we're putting microplastics in the ocean. We know that Fukushima, like, ruined sushi for a long time. That happened. That really definitely happened. It's still happening, low-key. We all just decided we like sushi too much, and YOLO. So, fuck. You know, like, this is, like, not news to anybody. And yet, we have a really hard time talking about it. I think because it's scary. And that's fine. It is scary. It's a scary thing to suggest peace in a place that has only ever really known war. And oh my god, if that's not the case for our entire globe, you know. But honestly, and I'm gonna say this again, and I'm gonna keep saying it, I really do think we're being sabotaged. And I'm gonna put it out there that I don't think I've never seen a species ever. I've never ever seen any species that self-immolates, right? Like, we don't fucking have that happening where an entire species tries to die. And yet humanity sure seems to be trying to fucking die. Like, what is going on here? Right? I really do think that maybe there is some kind of outside force that might be interfering with our ability to care for ourselves. I don't think it's that crazy. I think we all know aliens are definitely real, and from a psychic perspective, they live among us every day, right now even. But it is worth noting that most species don't try to commit active suicide, and yet somehow our species really seems headed towards that. So we have to wonder, is this some evolution of survival that just feels like suicide but is actually going to skyrocket us into some new aspect of our adaptable nature? Or are we actually being encouraged towards suicide by a competitor who would rather us not be around because we actively threaten their existence, right? And in environment, in ecology, in the world, you see competing species. You do. They compete for resources. They compete for the watering hole. They compete for food. And I would argue that we are now posing some sort of threat to some other species and being sabotaged for our existence. And if that's not actually happening right now, it's so likely that it could happen in the future. We should at least be preparing for that possibility, again collectively, again internally, as we think about our world and the way that we move through the world as people, as individuals. We really do need to be thinking about that, and to see how it shows up in ourselves, because we're not just being sabotaged on a grand scale in ways that are completely outside of our control. We're being sabotaged at the microsecond level, because again, this is a quantum thing, right? It has to be quantum technology that would be sabotaging us, because there's obviously nobody flying around in Earth space. I mean, or is there? But it's way easier to sabotage people at the quantum level, that, you know, in a broad scale sort of way. If you want to sabotage an entire species, way easier to do it at a quantum level than it is to do in physical space-time. So, or in the third dimension, rather. So, oh God, this is anxiety-inducing. I'm glad I'm holding my cat. Yes, so this is a scary time to be alive, but as an individual, as a person, you are perfectly capable of thinking and experiencing the world at a quantum level, and being with yourself and present with yourself or with others at that level. It is that microsecond moment, and most people are familiar with this in the form of intimacy, usually sexual or romantic intimacy. But intimacy in general requires a certain amount of quantum presence, because that is what makes it intimate. It is the proton layer of you touching the proton layer of others. I'm loosely using the word proton because I'm not actually a physicist, but you definitely understand what I mean. So that level of intimacy is vulnerable. It's like scary to be that vulnerable, and it's super scary to be that vulnerable with like groups, or with the perception of being so vulnerable to a hostile other species. Like, that is a lot to take in, and I know I'm telling you a lot of stuff right now that I'm just sort of fucking spitballing, but really, it's all very possible. And so we have to think of it as whether or not it's plausible. And honestly, looking at the state of our people, like, it seems quite likely to me that that is what's happening. This, like, we are not this evil and bad. I just don't think we are. And it's not my bleeding heart saying that. I'm just saying, like, why would we be trying to actively kill ourselves this hard? Like, this isn't taken as a whole throughout all of human history and things. All I see are instances of quantum level psychological sabotage. And even if it's not true, it is very useful to conceptualize it that way when you're thinking about resistance, and you're thinking about altruism, and you're thinking about a more positive future for our species, which who doesn't want that, right? Who isn't thinking about our future, our children's future, our children's children's future, and thinking, oh, I want them to fucking suffer? Nobody's thinking that. Nobody's like, oh yeah, I want them to have the Mad Max Waterworld future dystopian bullshit, right? No one is doing that. We're just afraid that that will happen. And so we talk about it. That's the whole purpose of dystopia. We discuss our fears, and we elaborate them, and we get specific about them in the hopes that our future generations will be better prepared to handle those things. So, take me with a grain of salt, but it really does seem to me to be possible that we are in a sort of quantum level psychological battle with some other competing species in the universe who is threatened by our existence. Again, at the quantum level, space-time distance is not as relevant. So, with that in mind, please be moving through your daily life, thinking about the ways in which your intimate moments are contributing to our collective wellness, because that's what's happening. Every time you're intimate with anyone, and especially with yourself, although I'm not talking about masturbating, I'm a little bit talking about masturbating because that is intimate, but when you are experiencing moments of vulnerable, in the present moment knowing of oneself, be kind. It will be much easier for you to be kind to others. And that kindness will be paid forward onto others. We know that's how that works. We know that that's how that works. And no, I don't imagine that my utopian future of kindness, my solar punk future for humanity living within its ecological means, and being much more humanitarian and altruistic and loving, I don't imagine that we will stop seeing evil, that we will stop seeing cruelty, that we will stop seeing pettiness, meanness, violence, hate-based terrorism even. I don't think we're going to stop seeing that altogether. I do think those things are a part of our being as humans. I think we are violent. I think violence towards each other is a natural instinct, and our fear of others is also a evolutionary instinct from times in which it used to be protected. It's an echo of our evolution, of our species. It doesn't need to be reiterated into the world without thought, without care, without consideration. We can take our evolutionary history, the tools, the things that we learned that are embedded in us, and use them more thoughtfully. We can operationalize them more consciously because we are becoming more and more conscious as creatures. And that's a beautiful thing. It's overwhelming. It creates a lot of existential dread. It creates a lot of uncertainty and fear. It creates a lot of screaming terror in existence, staring into the void and realizing your own awareness and seeing it reiterated over and over and over like a hall of mirrors that never fucking ends. Yeah, That's a goddamn scary experience to have. It's hard to be human. This package is savage and flawed. Rachel Kahn, she's so cool. But yeah, that's a song called Maybe by Rachel Kahn, Rachelkahn, I think, or NN. I'm bad at spelling. I'm like, haha, Genghis Khan, but Rachel. So anyway, it's hard to be human. Yeah, it really fucking is. But we can operationalize the things that we have previously been unable to help. Our fear, our instinctual fear of others or those who are not like us or those we don't understand does not need to be immediately knee-jerk pulled into reality as a violent refutation of their existence. That is so childish within the context of how far we've grown as humans. But we can use that fear of otherness in a muted way as an indicator for where otherness is. We have gotten sophisticated enough to identify other humans as simply being other but human, right? Not other so other to us that they are anathema and must be murdered. That's ancient. That's way back there. It still comes up in racism, in fucking homophobia, transphobia, so many things. That is what othering is, yes. And people's knee-jerk reactions and reinforcement of those ancient fears are small, petty-minded, and they look small and petty-minded, and you will be bred out of existence, thank you very much. But we can operationalize the echo of that other sensing for aliens, yeah, and maybe other friend, right? Other neutral party, other galactic commons? Please tell me the Milky Way, other parts of the Milky Way are more sophisticated than us. Oh my god, I would love it, but like I kind of also know how time works. No, I'm going to go back to hoping that other parts of the Milky Way are populated with more advanced species who have grown beyond their infighting in order to like create some sort of common council in which they may or may not be deliberating including humanity into. Yep, that's my headcanon. Gonna hope for that one. Don't think it's true enough to really put my I don't know why I was gonna say put my socks on the table for it, but yeah, I do. Never mind. I know that was a poker reference, but yeah, I don't know if it's that true, but it's a nice hope. It's a nice dream, and if it doesn't exist, maybe we can help make it exist. But we can't do that. We can't like live in the cool world of like the Belter universe. Thank you, fucking God, who was that? I've had Jim Butcher on my mind for days, but it was not Jim Butcher. The Expanse. Who wrote The Expanse? Who wrote the fucking Expanse? Oh my god, I'm so sorry, author name. Well, anyway, we can't have this, like, gloriously flawed version of humanity that is actively striving towards betterment, but in a solar system, we get to experience the vastness of space in our bodies sort of way that I think a lot of us are really kind of hopeful for. I think a lot of us are, like, dreaming beyond our planet. And a lot of us are also dreaming to stay on the planet and to be stewards and caretakers for the land and the species here. And that's also desperately needed. It's not like we don't need both for like a even-handed expansion into the like further reaches of our home solar system. But we also have to keep in mind that we might have intelligent neighbors who would not appreciate us disturbing their homes. And that means we need to become more environmentally conscious and more capable of working together between the Gaiists and the spaciists, right here on Earth, right here at home, before we leave, right? Before we start thinking about all of that, before we do any of that actual physical movement, we need a little bit more mindfulness. We need a little bit more presence in our time and space and with each other, with ourselves, thinking about these concepts and really forming resolve and resolutions about what this means for us as people and where we want to go with it, and considering that all within the context of who we are at the individual level, and recognizing our power as individuals to impact that broader scale. Again, chaos theory, butterfly wing style, everything you do inside of you is going to show up in the world somehow. And so the way that you think about things, the way that you think about yourself, hopefully with kindness, please with kindness and compassion, but the way that you do this is going to impact the rest of the world, not just how they treat you, although that's somewhat true because we reflect things, but never mind. But also just in vibes, man. You know, it's in the quantum level. It's in the waveform of your brain's being. Like, your brain's being, dude. It's like really fucking in there. And that's honestly kind of scary. And I went through that, especially recently, thinking about like just the guilt and like the weight of the true awareness of knowing that like every bad, mean thought I've ever had has actually had a real world impact. Like, it just has. Maybe not as much as an action would, but thoughts aren't not there. They don't not exist. They don't have no weight. So they do have some weight, and they do have impact because of that weight. And so to think like to myself and to realize that, oh my God, you know, every mean thing, every cruel thought, every bad vibe I've ever put out has really had an impact on the world. And like knowing me and knowing that I tend to have a big impact no matter where I, like what it is I'm doing, that feels like a lot. It feels like a huge responsibility. Like, oh my God, I can only ever do good. I can only ever like, I have to think good, I have to be good, I have to be pure and good all the way down. I gotta like scrub myself inside and out. I've gotta become clean and good and pure and not evil and not bad, and I'm just so bad. You know, like, and obviously that's not a good way to think about it either. That's not helpful. It's mean to me to think about that like that, because humans are human. Like, we are going to have bad thoughts. We're going to think cruel things. We're going to be mean in our heads. And it's not that that has a net negative impact. And I think that's the mistranslation there. Is like, sometimes when I think mean things, those things happen to be true, and calling out the truth of a matter is often more important than being nice. So it's not all black and white in that sense. And there isn't this like desperate need for us to scrub ourselves from the inside out and like become clean and pure. I feel like that's toxic. It's so toxic in its own way, because it erases the ambiguity of humanity. And the ambiguity of humanity is a integral part, and we're getting back into religiosity here, I'm sure, because it's an integral part of our free will, this ability to choose good or evil, to choose whether or not we do good or do evil, whether or not we choose to act on the mean thoughts, whether or not we choose to act on the good thoughts. All of these aspects of our being is a part of our free will and a part of our, some might call it like the test of existence, but I would call it the beauty of our capacity to actually influence the world, because you cannot be an influence at a quantum level if you can't participate in uncertainty. Like, you need Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You need whether or not the particles are being observed. You need this box in, or cat in the box, cat out of the box, ouch, okay, tinnitus, situation, because the ability to choose between them, to make that choice, even at the micronic, completely microscopic, microsecond layer level of things, that ability to choose is what gives you the ability to be dynamic, and it's what makes you capable of moving through the world as a free agent. And that is what makes it possible to still impact your life or the world around you. So you could not like, humanity would not be free to be itself, to make its own choices, to create its own reality, if it didn't have these choices, and if it wasn't living within that state of binaries or traveling across those spectrums. So I am going to wrap this up just by reiterating that neurodiversity and gender and sexuality diversity are positive indicators for our adaptability in the increasingly dynamic times we find ourselves. We are moving forward in time, although it could be backwards too, but there is no arrow of time really. But as far as our species goes, we do seem to be headed towards more altruism, more humanitarianism, more civilized society, as it were. And since we like civilized society, you know, we love palaces, we love touring. Oh my god, the amount that I do not want to feel guilty doing tourism in the world is so huge. That's like one of my biggest motivators. I want to travel and like experience other people's culture and world without feeling guilty about it. I want to do it without feeling like I am exploiting them in order to do it. That is huge, and that's not really possible right now as an American. Like, in a lot of ways, right? Like, this isn't cool. We wanna explore and travel and experience one another. Honestly, I think we're just obsessed with each other, to be honest. And we deserve it. We deserve the time to get to know each other. We deserve the time to fall in love with one another. We deserve the time to really, truly appreciate who we are and where we are in the world. And to me, I see no other more positive indicator of that than the increase in both awareness and protection for neurodiversity and gender and sexual identity in the larger population in America, but also around the world. We are seeing this honoring of individual uniqueness as a reaction to an oppressive system that has consistently erased uniqueness as being threatening to our survival. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I don't know if it was ever true. I don't know if those systems were at one point protective, that at one point it was easier or healthier for us to be a little bit more, I don't want to say the word unanimous, there's a word I mean that starts with a U and I just can't think of it, uniform, a little bit more uniform in not construct, not composition, uniform in composition as creatures. Maybe it was protective at some point to appear that way, but we are not uniform in composition, and I think it's actually much more of a strength and much more of a sign of our progress to see us becoming unique and less uniform in composition. The level of diversity with which we are capable of exhibiting and exercising at the individual and at group levels, I think, is the main thing that is going to be able to save us. Our capacity to become more dynamic right now is going to save us. And honestly, it's going to make us more happy. Like, we are going to be more joyful. When there's more room for you to be every last aspect of every last piece of who you are in all of your glory, there's more room for me too. And we all deserve that. We all need that if we're going to survive. So I'm just going to lay that out there. Obviously, diversity of skin color and culture and ethnicity also matters. I do want to reiterate that race is a social construct. We made it up entirely, especially in America, to depict certain groups of people in order to oppress them, like literally just in order to keep them from having money or property or land or the ability to marry or any of these things. So, in that sense, not really real. Skin color is real. It's about your melanin content and the areas on this earth that your ancestors have lived for the longest. Like, and yeah, that's relevant. It matters, and it indicates a certain, probably, it indicates certain culture or cultural traditions and history that need to be acknowledged and honored in interpersonal social relating. All of that's true. All of that's real. But race as these like fixed buckets or constructs has only ever been created as a form of oppression, and that does need to be completely just done away with. I was going to say absolved, but I don't want to absolve the doers of that. And resolve is also not the word I mean. Dissolved. There we go. It needs to be completely dissolved. Thank you. Thank you to anybody handing me words from your lexicons in the psychic plane. Love you, fam. And we will see you next time in the next episode, which is episode 15 under persons. This is the last of the person noun that we are doing, the last episode here. It is number 15, and it's going to be the macro to micro arguments surrounding good and evil, health and wealth, shared values, and global concerns in social and environmental justice are coming to an end as literacy skyrockets and resolve forms at a variety of important geopolitical levels. Now, try to re-say that to yourself in a tone of voice that doesn't make it sound completely incomprehensible, and I'll see you next time.